The air in that office was heavy enough to choke on. Dustin sat there with his smug little grin, tapping his designer pen against the polished table, convinced he already knew the ending of this play. My ex-wife's will, $34 million on the line, and he thought I was just a prop in the background. An afterthought. But when the lawyer cleared her throat and read one single sentence, I saw that grin crack, then collapse. His eyes went wide, the color draining from his face. And then came the scream, raw, ugly, so loud the walls trembled. That sound, it wasn't grief. It was terror. That's how it began. Not with a reunion, not with some tender farewell. With a scream that cut through me like a blade and told me everything I needed to know. My own son was about to become my enemy. The phone call that dragged me back into all this came 3 days earlier. I was on my knees in the kitchen, mopping up coffee after my neighbor Henderson had started yelling again about my sprinkler system. My 65-year-old knees ached against the linoleum, my towel dripping brown circles on the floor when the phone rang. I almost ignored it. Thought it was another scam call. But it kept ringing, and something in my gut told me to answer. Mr. Flores? The woman's voice was calm, professional, too careful. I'd heard that tone before. The one people use when they're about to wreck your world. This is Janet Morrison from Morrison Welsh & Associates. I'm calling about Briana Elizabeth Flores. No one had spoken my ex-wife's full name in my presence for 15 years. My hand gripped the receiver tighter. What about her? I'm very sorry to inform you that Mrs. Flores passed away Tuesday evening. The funeral service will be held this Friday at Riverside Memorial Chapel. Her words didn't just land. They hit like a truck. My kitchen chair groaned when I collapsed into it, my heart thudding against my ribs. Briana. Stubborn, brilliant, impossible Briana. Gone. And there will be a reading of the will following the service. You've been named as a beneficiary. Your presence would be appreciated. Beneficiary. That word tasted foreign. Bitter. She had built her empire long after our divorce. A consulting firm, then bigger contracts, then articles in business magazines. She'd climbed into a world I never belonged to. What could she possibly have left me? I showed up at that funeral in my only decent suit, a black tie that hadn't been tied in 5 years, shoes polished until the cracks in the leather were almost hidden. The chapel reeked of lilies and money. Mahogany pews, stained glass that glowed with manufactured holiness, 200 people dressed in black that cost more than my monthly rent. I tried to blend into the back row, but whispers followed me like snakes. Her ex-husband. Can you believe he showed up? I heard he was the reason she divorced. Let them talk. I'd learned long ago you can't fight the stories people invent. Then Dustin appeared. My son. 37 years old, cut from her image, sharp suit, sharper jaw, a Rolex flashing every time he gestured. Success radiated off him like heat from asphalt. He stopped dead in the aisle when he saw me. What are you doing here? His voice cut across the chapel, heads turning, whispers dying in the air. I stood up slowly. I came to pay my respects. You lost that right 15 years ago. She wouldn't have wanted you here. He came closer, cologne sharp and expensive, his tone louder with every word. You don't get to show up now and pretend you care. You embarrassed her enough when she was alive. Don't compound it by pretending grief. 200 pairs of eyes locked on us. My son, trying to throw me out of his mother's funeral like I was some vagrant who'd wandered in. I held his stare, my jaw clenched. Inside, something twisted. Pain, yes, but also a dark certainty. He was hiding something, and I was going to find out what. The service ended, but the storm didn't. At 4:30, we were herded into the law office downtown, mahogany shelves lined with books that probably no one ever read. The lawyer, a thin woman with steel gray hair, opened the folder. Dustin leaned back, smug again, fingers steepled like some victorious general. He was sure the empire was his. And then she read it. Just one line. One legal sentence. The pen slipped from his hand. His face drained, twisted, and then came that scream. That animal scream that told me everything. Briana hadn't given him what he thought he deserved. That scream was the sound of war beginning. When Dustin screamed in that office, it wasn't grief, it wasn't shock, it was fear. A man only makes that sound when the ground under him collapses. I didn't know yet what Briana had written, but I knew this. My son had expected to inherit her empire, and instead she'd left him a ticking bomb. I kept my face still, blank, like I hadn't noticed. But inside, something sharp clicked into place. 15 years of distance, 15 years of silence. And suddenly I was back in their story, not by choice, but by Briana's hand. After the reading, people flooded out into the marble lobby, whispering behind manicured fingers. Dustin avoided my eyes, storming toward the elevators with a look that could peel paint. I caught only fragments of what the lawyers said. Contingencies, sealed documents, delayed transfer. Words that meant nothing yet, but carried weight. I stayed behind, letting the crowd thin out. The lawyer handed me a slim envelope with my name typed neatly across it. "Mr. Flores, this is for you." Mrs. Flores was specific. My fingers traced the seal. I didn't open it there. Not in front of their stares, not under Dustin's glare. Some things deserve privacy. The night after the funeral, I sat at my kitchen table with that envelope resting in front of me. The room smelled of old coffee and lemon cleaner. My hands were steady as I tore the flap. Inside was a letter. Her handwriting, sharp, elegant, a little impatient, just like her voice had been. "Jerry, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if Dustin is angry, good. He earned it. I built something he will never truly value, and I refuse to hand it to him without a test. You, of all people, know what it takes to build a life from nothing. That's why I've named you in the will. Not for love, not for reconciliation, but because I trust you to see clearly when he cannot. Briana." I read it 3 times. Each word cut like glass. Not for love, not for reconciliation. Trust, but not warmth. Still, she'd chosen me over him. That fact alone was gasoline on the fire. The next morning, I drove past the house we once shared, the house she'd expanded into a palace after our divorce. Stone facade, steel gates, cameras on every corner. The kind of fortress money builds when it knows it has enemies. Dustin's black BMW sat in the driveway, crooked, as if he'd slammed on the brakes and stormed inside. Lights glowed in every window, though it was only 8 a.m. Too restless to sleep, too angry to sit still. I parked a block away and watched. Cold air bit at my face through the cracked window. Neighbors walked their dogs, joggers passed, and there I sat, a man with nothing but time and a growing storm in his chest. At noon, I slipped into Riverside Cafe, the one place downtown where gossip dripped faster than the coffee. Lawyers, assistants, consultants, they all came here for sandwiches and spilled secrets. I didn't have to wait long. At the next table, 2 women in pencil skirts leaned close. "Did you hear about Flores? The son's furious. Apparently, the assets aren't transferring until he meets certain conditions. Something about oversight." "Who's overseeing?" "Her ex. Can you imagine? The man she divorced is holding the keys." I sipped my bitter coffee, hiding my smirk. So that was it. She'd left me as the gatekeeper. Dustin couldn't touch a cent without me. And judging by that scream, he hadn't known. That evening, I checked my voicemail. 3 messages from unknown numbers. The first was Dustin, his voice clipped, controlled. "Dad, we need to talk. Call me back." The second was shorter, sharper. "This isn't over. You don't know what you're getting into." The third was almost a whisper, shaking with rage. "You think you've won? You think she loved you enough to trust you? She didn't. She used you, and I'll prove it." I replayed that last one twice, listening to the tremor in his voice. He wanted control, but fear bled through. That night, I sat in the dark, blinds half shut, the letter from Briana spread across my table. I thought about the years she'd spent turning Dustin into her protege, the computers, the tutors, the wine tastings at age 12, the endless lectures about success. She'd built him into a machine, but she'd left me the manual to shut him down. And Dustin, he thought I was just a tired old man with a leaky faucet and a pension. He didn't know I'd spent 30 years in the power plant, memorizing systems, spotting faults, fixing what everyone else overlooked. My whole life had been about knowing where the cracks are, and now I was looking at the biggest crack of all, my son. I started with the basics. Bank records, old contacts, a few favors from people who still owed me. Dustin had debts, that much was clear. Credit lines stretched thin, luxury cars leased, not owned. His entire empire was built on appearances, smoke, and glass. And now he needed Briana's fortune to keep it all standing. Without it, he was finished. I closed the last folder just past midnight. The house was quiet, but my pulse was loud in my ears. Briana hadn't given me her fortune out of love. She'd given me the chance to finish what she couldn't. She'd handed me the weapon, and I intended to use it. The first move in any game isn't about strength. It's about surprise. You don't kick the door in. You knock softly, then let the other man realize the lock is already gone. That's how you rattle him. That's how you make him bleed before the fight even starts. 2 mornings after the funeral, I parked across from Dustin's glass office downtown. Flores and Cole Consulting, the name plastered across polished steel letters. He'd built it fast, loud, and hollow, like a man who never believed the ground beneath him could crack. Through the window, I watched him strut across the lobby in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. He barked orders, waved his phone like a weapon, kissed his assistant on the cheek. A king in his tiny kingdom. I waited until he'd settled in, then walked through those same doors. No appointment. No warning. The receptionist looked up, startled, but I kept walking. My boots on their marble floor echoed louder than any gavel. Dustin's office sat at the end of the corridor, glass walls showing him mid-conversation with 2 men in tailored suits. He looked up, saw me, and his jaw locked tight. "Gentlemen, give me a moment," he muttered, ushering them out. When the door clicked shut, the mask slipped. His voice dropped into a hiss. "What the hell are you doing here?" I let the silence hang before answering. "Checking on my son. You're not my father." His eyes narrowed, venom in every word. "You're a liability. Whatever she left you, whatever she promised you, it's mine. It was always supposed to be mine." I pulled Briana's letter from my coat pocket, slid it across his desk. He didn't touch it, just stared, like it was a snake about to strike. "She trusted me," I said, my voice flat. "Not you. She knew you'd choke on power the way a drunk chokes on cheap whiskey." He slammed his palm against the desk. "You think this changes anything? I've already put in the work. The contracts, the assets, the partners, they're all tied to me." I leaned closer, close enough to smell the expensive cologne barely hiding his sweat. "And I've already spoken to 2 of those partners. You've got loans hanging over your head like storm clouds. Without your mother's estate, you're finished. And guess who holds the keys to that estate?" His face twitched. Just a fraction. But I saw it. Fear. That night, I made my first cut. Small, precise. I called Cole, his supposed partner. We'd never met, but I knew his type. A man who didn't like surprises. I asked him one simple question. "Do you know where your money's going?" The silence on the other end told me he didn't. So I emailed him copies of a few things Dustin had tried to hide. Credit reports. Overdraft notices. A lease agreement on that BMW. All public record, all legal. Just presented in the right order. By morning, Cole would start asking questions. And Dustin would feel the walls inching closer. The next day, my phone rang at dawn. "Dustin." His voice was tight, almost breaking. "You want to destroy me? Fine. But don't you dare act like you're doing this for Mom. She despised you." "Maybe," I said calmly. "But she trusted me more than she trusted you. You think you can play God with my life?" His breath rasped through the line, shallow, furious. "I'll bury you. You hear me? I'll bury you." "Son," I said quietly, "you already started digging." And I hung up. I spent the afternoon in the library, not with books, but with silence. Planning. My hands shook once, when I thought about Briana's laugh in the early days, when none of this poison existed. I'd worked overtime to buy her a little house, and she'd kissed me like I'd handed her the world. But the woman in that letter was different. Harder. Sharper. She knew Dustin wasn't built to carry her legacy. She'd handed me the blade, and whether I liked it or not, I had to cut. That evening, headlights swept across my living room curtains. My pulse tightened. No one visited me, not at night. I peeked out. Dustin's BMW. The knock came hard enough to rattle the doorframe. I opened it slowly. He stood there, tie loose, eyes wild. "Let me in," he demanded. I stepped aside. He stormed past me, straight into the kitchen, pacing like a caged animal. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me sweat, playing the big man after all these years." I stayed by the doorway, arms folded. "You came here for something. Say it." His hands slammed against the counter. "Sign it over. All of it. The oversight, the trust, whatever she gave you. Sign it, and I'll cut you in. You'll live comfortable. I can make this go away." I let him spit his offer into the silence, then said one word: "No." His face contorted. He was used to yes. From assistants, from partners, from women he tossed aside. But not from me. "Then you're dead to me," he snarled. "And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd stayed gone." He stormed out, tires screaming against the pavement. I stood alone in the quiet kitchen, the echo of his threat hanging heavy. My son had just declared war. Good. He had no idea how long I'd been waiting to fight. The first strike had landed. I'd seen it in Dustin's eyes that night, fear and rage tangled together. He wasn't used to anyone saying no, especially not me. But fear makes men sloppy, and sloppy men make mistakes. 2 days later, news hit the business pages. Cole and Flores Consulting had temporarily suspended 2 major contracts, citing internal restructuring. That's corporate speak for panic. I knew Cole had pulled back after seeing the numbers I'd slipped under his nose. Dustin must have spent the morning making phone calls, begging, threatening, trying to patch leaks in a boat already half sunk. I sat at my kitchen table, the newspaper spread out beside my coffee, and smiled into the bitter steam. By afternoon, Dustin made his move. A thick envelope slid through my mail slot. No return address, no greeting. Inside were photocopies of old court records, divorce filings, even a hospital bill from when I'd been laid up after the accident in '98. Highlighted lines, underlined phrases, arrows pointing to every weakness, every mistake. A crude message: "I know your past. I'll use it against you." I let the papers scatter across the floor. 15 years ago, maybe, that would have worked. But time has a way of turning shame into armor. Everything in those files I'd already lived through. Dustin thought he'd found my cracks. He didn't realize those scars had already hardened into steel. That night, I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Mike Danner, an old friend from my power plant days, now running background checks for half the city. "Mike, it's Jerry. I need a favor." Silence, then a laugh. "Damn, Flores. Thought you were dead." "Not yet. Listen, I need everything you can dig up on my son. Loans, liens, partnerships, lawsuits." Quietly. Mike didn't hesitate. "Give me 72 hours. 3 nights later, we met at a diner on 8th Street. The place smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee, the kind of joint where nobody asks questions. Mike slid a manila folder across the sticky table. "Your boy's drowning," he said. "Maxed out lines of credit. Gambling markers in Vegas. And this," he tapped a stapled packet. "A personal loan from a man you don't want to owe. Name's Victor Hahn. Runs money through 3 different construction firms. When he doesn't get paid, people disappear." I thumbed through the pages, each one heavier than the last. Dustin wasn't just reckless. He was in bed with sharks. Mike leaned back, eyes sharp. "You planning to use this?" I folded the folder shut. "Not yet. First I want him to feel it." The next morning, I made a stop at Briana's old foundation office, the charity wing she'd set up for tax breaks and image polish. I'd expected dusty files, maybe a part-time clerk. Instead, I found something better, a safe deposit of documents, neatly cataloged. Contracts, trusts, contingency plans. And there it was, a clause in the estate. Dustin couldn't access his share until his debts were cleared. All debts. verified and signed off by an independent overseer. That overseer was me. I almost laughed out loud in that stale office. She hadn't just trusted me with oversight. She'd handed me the lever to collapse him entirely. That evening, Dustin called again. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't slept. "Dad, listen. I overreacted. We should meet. Talk this through like family." Family. The word curdled in my ear. "Tomorrow. Noon. Riverside Grill." He agreed too fast. Desperation always shows. The restaurant reeked of cedar smoke and cheap whiskey. Dustin sat in the corner booth, sunglasses still on indoors, trying to hide the bags under his eyes. He forced a smile. "Dad, glad you came." I slid into the booth opposite him. "Say what you came to say." He leaned forward, voice low. "We both know Mom didn't mean to cut me out. She was angry, confused. But you and we can fix this. Sign the documents, transfer the oversight. You'll get a cut, more than you've ever seen." His hand shook as he slid a check across the table. 6 zeros. More money than I'd seen in one place in my life. I didn't touch it, just stared at him until the silence pressed down heavy. "Finally," I said, "you're broke. You're in debt to men who'll gut you the second you default. This check, it's worth less than the paper it's printed on." His jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I do." I leaned forward. Victor Hahn rang a bell. For the first time, his mask shattered. Eyes wide, breath caught, skin pale. That name hit him like a gunshot. I stood, leaving the check on the table. "Game's changed, son. You don't scare me with paper. I scare you with truth." And I walked out, leaving him alone with his terror. That night, headlights flashed outside my window again. My pulse ticked high, but it wasn't Dustin's BMW this time. It was a black SUV. It slowed, lingered, then pulled away. Victor Hahn's shadow had entered the game. That black SUV didn't just drive past my house by accident. It crawled like a predator testing the fence line. Windows tinted, engine too quiet, lingering just long enough to let me know. Dustin wasn't the only one watching me now. I didn't sleep that night. Sat in my recliner with the lights off, the letter from Briana on the table, and my phone in hand. Every creak of the house felt like a footstep. Every set of headlights rolling by made my heart thud against my ribs. Old instincts returned, the kind I thought I'd buried after years of punching a clock at the power plant. Turns out they'd only been sleeping. By morning, my mind was clear. Dustin was desperate. Desperate men bring wolves to the door. If Victor Hahn was circling, I needed to know how close his teeth already were. I drove across town to the south side, where Hahn's name was whispered but never printed. An old buddy of mine, Ralph, ran a pawnshop there. He'd seen every hustler, every loan shark, every broken man trying to trade gold chains for rent money. Ralph didn't even look surprised when I mentioned Victor. Just leaned back, chewing on a toothpick. Hahn doesn't chase small fish. If your boy owes him, it's 6 figures, easy. And Hahn collects in flesh if he can't get cash. "How much time does Dustin have?" Ralph shrugged. "Depends if Hahn thinks he can squeeze something useful out of him. A business, a house, family connections. Anything he can turn into money." His eyes narrowed. "You're the connection, aren't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table, spread out Mike's folder again. Dustin's debts were deeper than I'd imagined. Vegas markers, bounced checks, a business loan personally guaranteed with forged collateral. He was bleeding money faster than he could steal it. And then I saw it. A line item buried in his accounts. A transfer. $15,000 wired to Morrison and Welsh, the very law firm handling Briana's estate. My stomach turned cold. He wasn't just gambling away his fortune. He was trying to bribe his way into hers. That evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. A voice, low and calm, like gravel sliding down steel. "Mr. Flores, my name is Victor Hahn. We should meet." I kept my tone steady. "What for?" "Your son has obligations. You hold the papers that stand between me and repayment. That makes you part of this, whether you like it or not. When? Tomorrow. Noon. You'll be safe. For now." The line went dead. The next day, I drove to a steakhouse on the edge of town. One of those dark, wood-paneled places where nobody asks questions. Han sat in a booth with two men flanking him, both built like they'd been carved out of concrete. He looked ordinary. Expensive suit, neat haircut, soft smile. That's what made it worse. Monsters rarely look like monsters. Mr. Flores, he said warmly, as if greeting an old friend. Your son's in over his head. I don't care about his mistakes. I care about my money. 32,000 past due, 80 grand total. With interest, closer to 120. Understand? I nodded once. He tells me you control his inheritance. That means you control my repayment. So I'm asking politely, release the estate, and we all walk away smiling. I leaned forward, meeting his calm eyes. Not happening. Briana made sure of it. He gets nothing until he's clean. For a moment, silence. Then Han chuckled softly, shaking his head. Stubborn. I respect that. But stubbornness can become expensive. He slid a business card across the table. Plain white, just his name and number. Think it over. You have 3 days. When I walked out, the winter air hit me like ice water. My knees trembled, but my hands were steady. I just stared into the face of the man who could break my son's bones, or mine, without blinking. And yet, for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Because now I knew the truth. Dustin hadn't just been careless. He'd gambled with my life as collateral. That night, Dustin showed up again. No BMW this time. He'd come on foot, jacket wrinkled, eyes red like he hadn't slept. He shoved past me into the house, slamming the door behind him. What the hell did you tell Han? I stared at him. Enough. You don't get it. His voice cracked. He's not like other guys. If I don't pay, I'm dead. And if you keep playing gatekeeper, you're dead too. For a long moment, we just stood there. Father and son, nothing between us but lies and rage. Finally, I said quietly, maybe it's time you learned what being broke really feels like. His face twisted, desperation bleeding into hatred. You'll regret this. I swear it. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I stood in the silence afterward, every muscle tight. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was survival. 3 days. That's what Victor Han had given me. 3 days to decide whether I'd hand him my son's inheritance or risk becoming collateral damage. But I already knew my answer. I wasn't going to buy Dustin's way out of the mess he'd created. I wasn't going to hand a fortune to a man who'd thrown me out of his mother's funeral like trash. No. If Han wanted his money, he was going to have to take it from Dustin's hands. And I was going to make sure those hands were empty. The first move came easy. I called Morrison & Welsh, the law firm managing Briana's estate. Asked for Janet, the same lawyer who'd given me Briana's letter. Mr. Flores, she said carefully, I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. I need you to freeze any pending transfers. Dustin may try to pressure you. He may even wave money under the table. Don't move a cent without my signature. She hesitated. That will cause conflict. That's the point, I said. Put it in writing. Effective immediately. When I hung up, a weight lifted. Dustin had just lost his only escape route. By evening, the storm hit. He showed up again, pounding my door with fists that shook the wood. I opened slowly. His face was red, his hair wild. He shoved a folded sheet of paper at me, a copy of a wire transfer confirmation. You froze it, he spat. You actually froze it. Do you know what you've done? Yes, I said simply. I've saved Briana's money from being bled dry by a son who treats it like poker chips. His voice cracked into a scream. He'll kill me, Dad. The word Dad stopped me for half a second. He hadn't called me that in years. But it wasn't love in his voice. It was fear. Pure, selfish fear. You dug this hole, I said coldly. Now you can see how deep it goes. He glared at me, shaking. Then he whispered, if he comes after me, I'm dragging you down too. And he stormed into the night. 2 hours later, the retaliation came. I just turned off the kitchen light when a rock shattered my living room window. Glass exploded across the carpet. My heart kicked like a hammer. I hit the floor, crawled to the edge, and peeked out through the shards. A black SUV idled at the curb, headlights off. The same one from before. The passenger window lowered. A man's silhouette. Then pop. A crack like firecrackers. Drywall dust puffed above my head. Gunfire. I rolled to the side, chest heaving, adrenaline burning every nerve. By the time I crawled to the window, the SUV was already pulling away, tires whispering against asphalt. Not a warning. A message. The cops came, took photos, filed their reports, but I saw it in their eyes. They knew Han's name, and they knew better than to poke that hornet's nest. So I cleaned up the glass myself, taped cardboard over the window, and sat back down at the table. My hands were steady now, more steady than they'd been in years. Because I realized something. They wanted me afraid. They wanted me to fold. But fear and folding were the two things I'd never taught myself to do. The next morning, I struck harder. I called Mike again. "You still got those contacts at the IRS?" He grunted. "Maybe." "Why?" "Because Dustin and Han think they own the board. I'm about to flip it." Within hours, Mike had forwarded me documents Dustin thought he'd buried. Unpaid taxes, doctored reports, shady deductions tied to his company. The kind of paperwork that could sink a business faster than any bullet. I packaged them neatly. Printed copies, labeled folders. One addressed to Cole, his business partner. Another to a federal contact who owed Mike a favor. By noon, the fuse was lit. That evening, Dustin called again. His voice was wild, hoarse. "What did you do?" "I told the truth," I said flatly. "You've killed me. You've." His words broke into ragged sobs, then fury. "You think this is revenge? You think Mom wanted this? She hated you. She used you to punish me." I stayed silent, letting him burn. "You're going to regret this," he hissed. "Han doesn't need me alive to collect. And when he comes, he'll come for you first." The line went dead. I sat in the quiet house, the letter from Briana under my hand. Her sharp handwriting staring back at me. "I trust you to see clearly when he cannot." The truth was clear now. This wasn't just about Dustin's greed anymore. It was about survival, mine, and maybe even his. Han had teeth in both of us. The difference was, I wasn't afraid to bite back. I knew the storm was close the moment the air in my house turned heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Han had given me 3 days. By my count, I was down to 12 hours. And Dustin? He hadn't called again. That silence was louder than all his screaming combined. I spent the night sorting papers into 3 neat stacks on my kitchen table. IRS reports, loan documents, evidence of Dustin's bribes to Morrison and Welsh. Each folder marked with a sticky note in my blocky handwriting. Federal, press, Han. 3 different weapons. I only needed to fire one. But I wanted them all ready. Every page I touched reminded me of the life I'd built the hard way. Overtime shifts at the plant, nights crawling through boiler rooms while Dustin slept in a bed I'd paid for. Sacrifice that meant nothing to him. Now, these same calloused hands were holding the rope around his neck. At sunrise, I drove to Riverside Park. Cold air stung my cheeks. Ducks floated lazily on the half-frozen pond, oblivious to the war about to break loose. Han was waiting. Same black SUV, same stone-faced guards. He stood beside the car like he was greeting a neighbor, hands folded neatly in front of him. "Mr. Flores," he said smoothly, "you've had your time. I trust you've reconsidered." I handed him an envelope. His guards tensed, but Han only raised an eyebrow before opening it. Inside, copies of Dustin's debts, bank statements, loan defaults, casino markers. Han scanned the pages, then chuckled. "So, you want me to see your son as worthless?" "I want you to see him clearly," I said. "If you think he'll pay you back, you're wasting your time. But me? I can make sure you get something. Just not the way you planned." His eyes flickered. "Go on. Briana's estate won't release funds until Dustin's debts are cleared. I control the release. Which means if you push too hard, you'll never see a dollar. But if you let him collapse publicly, if you let the system chew him up, I can help make sure his assets funnel your way before the IRS takes them." Silence. The pond rippled behind us, a breeze carrying the faint smell of gasoline from the SUV. Finally, Han smiled. "Small. Dangerous. You're colder than your son thinks. I like that. But if you're lying, I'm not. I met his gaze without blinking. And you'll know by tomorrow. That night, I prepared the last part of my plan. I sent Cole an anonymous email with Dustin's tax fraud neatly outlined, copies attached. Within minutes, I got a one-line reply, "We need to meet." Then I called Janet at Morrison and Welsh. My voice steady, calm. "Tomorrow, I'll be submitting amendments to Briana's estate oversight. I expect you to honor them." And finally, I drafted a press packet for the Spokane Herald. Title: The Heir Who Tried to Cheat His Mother's Legacy. Every ugly truth lined up like soldiers on parade. I sealed the envelope and set it on the mantel beside Briana's photo. Her eyes in that picture seemed sharper now, almost approving. At midnight, I heard footsteps on my porch. Not Hans' men. Dustin. I opened the door to find him slumped against the railing, hair uncombed, shirt untucked. He looked 10 years older than a week ago. "You win," he muttered. His voice cracked like dry wood. "I can't fight you anymore." "Not me," I said. "Yourself." He shook his head violently. "You think this is about me being greedy? You think I wanted her money just to flash it around? No, I needed it to survive. You don't know what it's like to owe men like Han. They'll skin me alive." "You put yourself there." His eyes burned. "Because I'm not like you. I don't fix boilers and collect pensions. I reach higher. I gamble. Sometimes I lose. But I try." I stepped closer, my voice low, sharp. "You don't gamble with family. You don't gamble with the woman who raised you, with the fortune she built, with the name she left. And you sure as hell don't gamble with me." Tears blurred in his eyes, but there was no remorse, only fear. Pure, selfish fear. He whispered, "He'll kill me." I stared at him for a long moment. The son I'd once carried on my shoulders at county fairs, now reduced to a shaking man who'd sell me for a handful of chips. "Finally," I said, "then maybe it's time someone else saw who you really are." And I closed the door in his face. The next morning, the world shifted. The Herald printed the story. Cole cut ties and filed suit. The IRS confirmed receipt of evidence. And Victor Hahn called me personally. His voice was calm, almost amused. "You've gutted your own son. Interesting. I respect men who finish what they start. We'll talk again, Mr. Flores. Soon." When the line went dead, I sat in the silence, heart pounding. Tomorrow would be the endgame. Dustin's name was in flames. Han's shadow loomed larger than ever, and Briana's fortune was finally, fully in my hands. The only question left was how hard I'd swing the final blow. Morning broke gray and cold, the kind of light that makes everything look washed out. Houses, trees, faces. Fitting, I thought, because by sundown, nothing in Dustin's world would look the same again. The phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Reporters, former partners, even Janet from the law office. The story had hit harder than I expected. Flores heir under federal scrutiny. My son's name in black print, right below words like fraud and embezzlement. By noon, Cole had officially severed ties. Lawsuit filed. Accounts frozen. And Dustin? Silent. Not a single call. Not a text. Just absence, like the coward he was. But silence can't last. Not with men like Hans circling. At 3 o'clock, I heard it. The roar of an engine outside. I looked through the blinds. Dustin's BMW, crooked in the driveway. He stumbled out, suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, desperation pouring off him. He banged on the door until I opened it. "You've destroyed me." His voice cracked into a hoarse scream. "Everything is gone. Cole, the IRS, the papers, God, the papers. You think this is justice? No, this is murder." I stayed calm. "You murdered yourself. I just showed the world the body." He pushed past me into the kitchen, hands shaking. "Han's coming for me. Do you get that? He doesn't care about lawsuits. He wants his money. And now that you've cut off the estate, he'll come after you too." I set a folder on the table, sliding it toward him. "Read it." He snatched it open. Inside were the amended estate documents. Clear as day. All oversight powers vested solely in me. Dustin disqualified as a beneficiary due to outstanding criminal investigations. His face went slack, lips trembling. You can't. You can't cut me out completely. I didn't, I said coldly. You did. Every lie, every debt, every threat. You signed your own exile. He dropped the folder, head in his hands. For a moment, he looked like a boy again. My boy. The one who used to run barefoot in our backyard, begging me to push him higher on the swing. Then the moment passed, swallowed by greed. You'll regret this, he whispered. You'll die alone. An hour later, the black SUV returned. This time, it didn't stop at the curb. It rolled straight into my driveway, tires crunching against gravel. Hans stepped out, calm as ever, his two men flanking him. Dustin froze at the window, pale as chalk. Stay here, I told him, though I knew he wouldn't listen. I opened the door before they could knock. Hans smiled politely. Mr. Flores. I see the papers. Very decisive. Behind me, Dustin burst out, nearly tripping over himself. Victor, listen, I can fix this. Han raised a hand. No more words. You've had enough. His eyes shifted back to me. You've taken control. So tell me, where does that leave us? I held his gaze. It leaves you with a choice. Go after Dustin, and you get nothing but a corpse in headlines. Work with me, and I'll make sure his remaining assets, every car, every account, every property, funnels through clean hands into yours before the government takes them. For the first time, Han's smile widened. Efficient. I like efficient. He turned to Dustin, whose lips quivered like he might beg. Your father is a sharper man than you. Dustin collapsed against the wall, sliding to the floor. A broken man. They left minutes later, SUV disappearing down the street. Dustin remained on the floor, rocking slightly, muttering nonsense to himself. I looked down at him, at the son who'd spent years sharpening knives for my back, at the man Briana thought she could mold into her legacy. And I realized the truth. I hadn't just destroyed him. I'd saved myself. I walked to the mantel, straightened Briana's photo, and whispered, You trusted me to see clearly. Now they all do. Then I turned back to Dustin, still crumpled like a discarded suit. Get out of my house, I said. He looked up, hollow eyes wide, and for once, he obeyed. The house fell silent again. No more pounding on the door, no more threats, no more shadows in black SUVs. Just silence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. When wolves came for me, I didn't run. I fed them my son.